You know, it's like, it's ridiculously crazy on how inflation is right now. Like, everything is going up. Food, rent, like gas. Like, yo, gas was so expensive. I just went ahead and sold my car for gas money. Like, it's ridiculous right now. I'm done with it, all right? What's going on with ya, big dog? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that your day is going phenomenal, but if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. Speaking of such, I know with inflation, that puts pretty much everybody on a crunch. We don't have as much money as we used to have unless you make more money. And today, I'm going to be showing you how to make more money by spending less money on budget strategies. Now, in my head, it makes perfect sense. It's like big brain energy going on right now, because the less money you spend on Yu-Gi-Oh, the more money you make, right? Right? That's not how it works, isn't it? You're just going to spend more money on Yu-Gi-Oh. Well, in all fairness, if you are a new player getting into the game, or you're just looking for another budget deck to play, in this particular video, I'm going to be giving you a guide on some of the best decks that are cheap and competitive, all the way down to decks that are not necessarily as cheap. Think of it as a guide if you're getting on in and figuring out what really works in this format. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump on in, as I have 5 different categories here. These will help you, give you a guide on what is going to be the top budget, all the way down to everybody's least favorite restaurant, Arby's. Because if you eat at Arby's, well, they got the meats. Anyways, top budget is going to be the strategies that are going to get you the most bang for your buck. These are going to be the strategies that are not only as cheap as possible, but also has that important ratio. It's going to be cheap via competitive. The next budget decks may be a little bit more pricey, or they just might be strategies that aren't as competitive but still are budget. Next is will take time, and it's exactly what it sounds like. These particular strategies will take time to be able to build fully competitive, but once you do build them, they're pretty good. From there, these are the strategies that don't necessarily justify their competitiveness or their cost right now. If you are a budget player, a hole in your wallet is just simply that. Maybe the strategy is just way too expensive right now. Maybe the strategy just isn't good for its expense. And then, of course, we've already explained the Arby's tier. All 3 people that keep Arby's afloat. I have no idea how you guys keep buying restaurant chains, but you're spending a good amount of money to keep that restaurant alive. Starting off with Dino, guys. Dino is easily a top budget deck. Not only does this strategy not need its extra deck in certain variants of Dino, there really isn't any expensive cards for the Dino strategy that are necessary. I understand that Pot of Prosperity is a card that makes Dinos extremely consistent, or a lot more consistent, but it's not mandatory for the deck. Especially if you're not playing an extra deck or don't really care, Pot of Extravagance is a very good budget alternative, which allows you to draw 2 cards from your deck, which can in some cases be better than Prosperity and still allows you to be able to play the deck fairly consistently. Its go-to breaking board style, summoning Ultimate Conductor Tyranno to be able to wipe your opponent's board, is extremely important inside of this format. And I keep saying it time after time again, Dinos love Mystic Mine, a card that is really good in this format to help you break boards, and then you slam your Lost World on top of it so you can make yours. On the flip side, I think Invoked is in that will take time category. So Invoked isn't necessarily an expensive deck, and that's why both of these, or every single one of these categories, have 2 different meanings, except for the Arby's tier. What I'm trying to tell you is that Invoked is a fairly cheap Yu-Gi-Oh strategy, but right now it's not its time. Where players citing hard for the Despia strategy, it just so happens to line up with the exact same counters as the Invoke strategy. But of course, if you don't see any Despia or Sword Soul strategies, because both of those counters really do play into Invoke's counters fairly hard inside of your meta and nobody's preparing for it, then Invoked is a very good cheap deck that you could take to your event. Altergeist, I genuinely feel, is the next budget. Genuinely, Altergeist is crazy So in the near future, we will be getting Ash Blossom reprints, which, I mean, that's pretty godly for the budget community. And right now, we already have Infinite Impermanence as a super rare from the structure decks, which are starting to creep up in price. So if I were you, I would definitely start picking those up. But hey, it's your money. With the banning of Predaplant Vert Anaconda, meaning that there's no Red Eyes Dark Dragoon or Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer in mass, Ultra guys can actually start playing that control approach. I really love that since spell cards are so popular in today's meta, think Despia being able to use all of their spell cards to fusion summon, well, Secret Village of the Spellcasters is a nice alternative for an Altergeist player to be able to get over on some of the top decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! And prevent them from being able to play their important spell cards while also being a really cheap Yu-Gi-Oh! Card. Again, this is a strategy that doesn't need Pot of Prosperity either. Just play Pot of Extravagance and Pot of Dualities. Altergeist overall is a really fun deck if you are playing it. If you're not playing it, then good luck. And is a fairly cheap project. On the flip side, Rocket Dragon Link. Oh man. Ironically, Dragon Link is closer to the next budget than what you think. The only expensive cards off the top of my head that you need for Rocket Dragon Link are Chaos Spaces, and of course, Warlord Savage Dragon. I have to think about that extra deck. It's definitely in the will take time category because there are quite the few expensive cards for the deck, like I just said. But ultimately, this is a strategy that pays off time after time again. I remember Rocket Dragon Link becoming very, very popular around right before COVID, which was in 2020, and we're 2 years later, and the Dragon Link strategy just does not seem to die. It just keeps getting support that really makes the deck powerful. Now players are playing Kwakemiru Drago. I almost completely forgot to talk about that in yesterday's insane video. Go ahead and check that out because it is one of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! And will continue to be one of the better decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! But this deck now summons Kwakemiru Drago to the side of the field to prevent you from fusion summoning into Leonidas, and then stomps decks like Sword Soul and Despia. Really good deck and definitely worth the investment. Ignister is a top budget deck, guys. Like, the only expensive thing about Ignister is Access Code Talker. Granted, you do need 1 to 2 copies of this card, but outside of that, everything else for Ignister is like pennies on the dollar, guys. You really have to be like just completely ridiculous to say that this deck is not one of the best cheap decks. Being able to summon at a rival at Ignister, which makes itself unaffected by all other card effects, is a W against some of the top meta strategies. It's like an instant win button. And this deck, as long as you take the time to dedicate yourself to learn out the combos and the sequencing, can be a very rewarding deck for a budget player. DDD is also a deck that is top budget. Time after time again, every time I turn around, it's always some DDD deck doing this, doing that. It's always doing them down dirty, as Different Dimension Demons are an incredible deck. Now, it does require a huge learning curve. Being able to understand what the card effects do, or should I say library of effects because their texts are so long, is completely different from actually playing in action and learning about certain situations that you have to play yourself out of. But of course, if you do like Fiend decks, then this is probably the strategy for you. Despia, where I put Despia. I genuinely think by the end of this year, Despia will be like top budget. But for right now, it's 100% a hole in your wallet. Let's just go over some of the cards for Despia. Guardian Chimera is already a $40 card. You pretty much need 2. And then, of course, there is your Despian Queritus, as well as your Masquerade the Blazing Dragon. Those cards are fairly expensive in themselves. On top of that, very simple cards like Branded Opening are about $20 each, making this deck an incredible hole in your wallet. But the good thing about this is that reprints are coming soon for the Despian strategy, so it's going to be a lot cheaper than what it is now. I think that that's going to be too strong. I haven't said that in a while, but definitely is the best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! One of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but way too expensive at this time. If you guys are unloading or trying to sell your Despia strategy, right now would be the perfect time, and then picking it up when it gets those reprints would be smartest. Moving on for Dinomorphia. Dinomorphia is our first Arby's tier. I don't think that this deck is good. I got you guys again. I got you, Dinomorphia players. Genuinely, this is a next budget deck, and I think the most expensive card for the strategy is probably Dinomorphia Theresia. That card is a 3 of, obviously, and it's needed for the Dinomorphia strategy, but outside of that, the deck is pennies on the dollar. So why exactly is it at the next budget instead of top budget? Well, Dinomorphia does need to wait for the correct format. Right now, there's too many things going on for Dinomorphia to be able to successfully thrive in every aspect of the game. But soon enough, people will know Dinomorphia. They'll know about the deck. They'll know that you might Dino what you're talking about if you let this deck smack you across the face. Zombie World is a deck that is the next budget. Genuinely, the reprints from Ghosts from the Past, as well as the new stuff from Dimension Force, makes this strategy legitimately good. Where it fails is that I don't think that there's enough Brain Eaters out there. I mean, there's enough Glue Eaters out there in Yu-Gi-Oh, so I guess that balances it out. Moving on, for Drytron. Drytron is actually in an interesting spot. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the Will Take Time, strictly because there have been Drytron builds that have not played Diviner of Herald, or played only one copy of Diviner of Herald, and have been successful. Regardless, some of the most successful Drytron builds still do play multiple copies of Diviner of Herald, so I'm going to put it into Will Take Time, as you can get one Herald and then build your way up, or you could just play Drytron in a different aspect. Keep in mind, Drytron is almost an engine at this point in time, being able to be splashed in tons of ritual decks. I think that if you are a ritual advocate, like if you love those blue cards, like if you 55th Street with these blue cards, then yeah, picking up a Drytron strategy is not a bad idea, as it does translate into the format as we talked about with our insane decks. Eldlich, as you guys should know, would probably always be top budget. For players that have bought 3 copies of the branded structure deck, I strongly suggest to just play Eldlich with it. It's if you are looking to complete the deck and compete on a budget. Eldlich is easily that particular strategy, and of course, it's the best trap deck in Yu-Gi-Oh, but Dinomorphia is definitely sneaking up on them. Shadows are a strategy that will take time as well. Cards like Guardian Chimera definitely gatekeep you from playing Shadows to its maximum potential. But I think outside, oh, and then of course there's Edgem Chain, that card's expensive. But then of course, I think outside of that, you might be done with genuinely expensive cards, as Shadow cards themselves have been reprinted to oblivion. Soon enough in the future, Shadows will be played inside of another deck, but that deck might be expensive in tier elements as well. Fluandereese is top budget. Literally, the only thing that's genuinely expensive with Fluandereese is Pot of Prosperity. Like, other than that, the Fluandereese cards don't crack the $10 to $15 mark. This is a strategy that has proven itself time after time again to be one of the top strategies in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think that Gokis are a next budget. I don't think Gokis don't do anything particularly very well, but the deck is like ridiculously cheap, like stupid cheap. And for the players that are looking for entry level learning how to link summon, as well as being able to have a deck that can compete with some cool cards, Gokis right there. Dark Magician is our very first Arby's tier, guys. I'm sorry, Dark Magician players. Ever since you lost Predaplat Vert Anaconda, it's only gotten worse. And then on top of that, there are cards that you need like Magician Souls and Illusion of Chaos, which are ridiculously expensive. On top of that, even with the cards pretty much getting confirmed reprints, Magician Souls getting a reprint twice this year, I believe, it's still not worth it to play Dark Magician. I genuinely have Arby's probably just for Dark Magician. Earth Machine, easily the next budget. I think you're going to have to find out if you want to play the Therion engine, as Therion King Regulus is going to be the most expensive card. And then there's Skill Drain if you decide to play that. But you don't necessarily need those, as Earth Machine has always found its way to play multiple ways to play itself. So it can still be competitive without those cards, which is why I say it is the next budget deck. Oh my God, man. Marine Cess, guys. Marine Cess. Marine Cess is kind of good. I remember last time I was like, yo, Marine Cess needs a 1-card combo in order for it to be good. And now I figured out the 1-card combo. This deck's it's pretty sauce. If you guys want to see a combo video with Marine Cess, let me know down below, as this deck is fairly good. And I think it's really cheap. I can't think of any Marine Cess card because all of them have been reprinted quite a few times. And then, of course, the new set, I think it does confirm some reprints for this deck. So yeah, it's going to be really cheap and fairly fun to play. Agents are 100% in that will take time. We're really just waiting for that Diviner of Herald reprint. That's really all about it. Once Diviner of Herald gets reprinted, this deck catapults to top budget, as it's one of the better strategies in Yu-Gi-Oh! That people are sleeping on. Unfortunately for Plunder Patrol players, you guys know it and I know it, this deck is a hole in your wallet. The Adventure Token engine is extremely expensive. I have to mortgage my house just to get the Adventure Token engine. Come on, guys. Just to go on an adventure. And then, of course, Magician Souls doesn't even help the Plunder Patrol strategy, as it compacts it. I'm not saying that this deck is bad. It's actually really fun to play. I think it's fairly good too, but it's definitely not worth the time right now. Prank Kids easily fit at the highest levels of competition in the Arby's tier. And allow me to explain. Because Prank Kids didn't necessarily lose a way to be able to abuse the adventure token package. In order to play Prank Kids at its most effectiveness, you probably still play the adventure token package. Now, if you're investing into the adventure token package, you can probably invest into this, you can invest into this, you can play it in this, you can play it in so many other strategies that are just simply better. Prank Kids did lose Meow Meow Mew, which helped hurt the deck tremendously. And ever since the limitation of Meow Meow Mew, we have not seen this deck in competitive circulation. But if you guys wanted to play a genuinely budget version of Prank Kids, it's a pretty fun deck. It's fairly good, and it does its job fairly well. This is Rocket Dragon Link. Apparently, I have it twice. So I'm going to skip over to Solomon Great. Easily a top budget deck. Solomon Great, the only problem with this particular strategy is, of course, Access Code Talker, $53. And your selection of hand traps, because those may be a thing to you. But you can pretty much skate until Ash Blossom gets a reprint, playing cards like Nibiru, being able to play cards like Effect Veiler, or even Infinite Impermanence. All three of those cards are very effective inside of this format and can be played in Solomon God. Sharks are also another top budget deck. It's actually really cool how Konami has jacked up their prices on the boxes, but given us quite the few competitive budget decks. I actually made a profile for the Shark deck if you guys wanted to see it. And I did include budget options because I did play some fairly expensive cards. But I think the most expensive card for Shark is getting a hold of Totally Awesome. That shouldn't be too much of a problem, as the card is, I mean, it did get a gold rare reprint, not too expensive, and allows you to be able to negate and steal opponent's cards. You're not going to get too many of those for the low. Sky Striker is a hole in the wallet. Look, guys, Sky Striker players, you know who you are. You're not satisfied with just playing secret rare copies of Sky Striker Ace Kagari. You want ultimate rares of all that stuff. But even before then, this deck felt like a one-hit wonder. We haven't seen it perform at the level that we would think it would, and that's probably because players are playing around Mystic Mine and Dimensional Barrier a lot better. Overall, I do think that Sky Strikers are still very expensive for what they are, but if somebody wanted to pick up Sky Strikers and learn the way of Mystic Mine, then this is probably the deck for you. Sun Avalon, I think, is a strategy that will take time. The Sun Avalon cards are cheap. The plant cards are fairly cheap for the most part. And my boy Jack, shout out to you, big dog, actually showed me a way where the Sun Avalon strategy doesn't require bricks. The problem is the Adventure Token engine. The problem is the Therion engine. Actually, it's just a hole in your wallet. I forgot about both of those engines combined. But yeah, that's really steep. I do think you can get away with playing just a plant engine and then build on a little bit of Therion and then build on a little bit of Adventure Token at the end. But that feels like it will take a lot of time for it to develop. Sword Soul is a huge hole in your wallet, guys. If you're getting a Yu-Gi-Oh, my best advice is to tell you not to buy Sword Soul right now. This deck will be reprinted in Oblivion, so do not, you heard it from me, buy Sword Soul at this point in time right now. It is a terrible idea. One of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh, but not a good buy right here. Phantom Knight's ridiculously cheap, guys. I can't think of any expensive Phantom Knight cards if you guys go get the cheapest copies of it. And the deck is fairly good. People have almost forgot about how powerful Phantom Knight's Fog Blade is. A searchable Infinite Impermanence-like card. And then being able to be able to special summon some of the best Exceed monsters in the game. There's the rank 5 Exceed monster. I forget his name. I think it's Arc Rebellion. Not that one. That one actually allows you to attack for a game. But the other one, they get you 3 monster effect negations. Phantom Knights are actually in a fairly decent spot competitively. Tri-Brigade, easily top budget, guys. Y'all sleeping on this deck. This deck is literally $5. I mean, not literally, but it's extremely cheap and really good. I think the only problem, just like with Solomon Great, that is with Tri-Brigade, is figuring out how you're going to get an access code talker. Not as needed with Tri-Brigade as it is with Solomon Great, but getting those important hand traps are going to be pretty necessary. Virtual World is stupid slept on, guys. I can't think of a single expensive Virtual World card. Like, I can't think of a single expensive Virtual World card for the deck. It's really cheap. It's up there, guys. When it comes to cheap and competitiveness, this is easily one of the top strategies. And keep in mind, Virtual World QB Shinshin will become a lot more powerful as players really start to need their graveyard when we start playing against decks like Splight and Tier Elements. And then, of course, Heroes. Heroes aren't bad. Heroes are not bad, but they are 100% a hole in your wallet. Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer got cheaper by like 20 bucks. This deck is ridiculously expensive and doesn't have the payoff that it should have. But if you are a genuine hero enthusiast that is so set on getting hero cards and you have the money to get it, it's not a bad idea right now. Just expect to lose a lot of games until you get all the cards for heroes and learn the meta. And that is all that I have for the budget tier list. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and let me know by checking out one of these videos, or let me know down below in the comment section. And should we give you guys another tier list this week? Let me know about that as well. I hope you're having an amazing day, as I'll catch you on the next video.